Hi, this is Carla King from Self-Pub Bootcamp with the Author Friendly Podcast. In this next half an hour, you're going to hear from a person behind one of the tools, products, or services to help writers that I review in the Consumer's Guide for Self-Publishers. Get access to this guide at selfpubbootcamp.com. Thanks and enjoy the podcast.
This is your baby, so we're basically your midwife. And if you don't feel comfortable with that midwife, you need to get somebody else.
Today, my conversation is with JoEllen Taylor of FirstEditing, who's been in the editing business since 2006. JoEllen handles a stable of hundreds of editors in all different kinds of genres, and you can approach them in any stage of your writing and editing process. You may need a high-level story edit, developmental edit, character scenes and all that, or you might just need a line edit. And in between is copy editing. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. And I was really enlightened by this conversation, and I think you will be too. So please enjoy my conversation with JoEllen Taylor. Hi, JoEllen. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So you are the editing expert, my go-to editing person. And I'm so glad to have you on because authors think, okay, I'm just going to have a copy edit done on my book and hey, it's good to go. I'll put it up for distribution. So could you go over the different kinds of editing for us and let us know exactly like what they are, what stages you should approach an editor in your manuscript development, all the way to final editing. And maybe you could throw some pricing in there as well and options, because I know writing groups can serve, for instance, as, beta readers who can help you with the developmental editing and character editing and all of that kind of thing. I know that's a big question, but I know what you're going to do. You're just going to start rolling with it. And pretty soon our half an hour is going to be up and we'll know all we need to know.
That's right. That's no problem. I think, you can talk about the three levels there are a few more here and there, but basically it all comes down to three levels of editing. And you can start with your copy editing that you mentioned, which is basically the final edit before you go to print. So normally people are not there unless they've already done several rounds of editing prior to that. There's also line editing, which is the most commonly recommended, which is basically making sure your grammar, spelling, punctuation, all that is good. And then the higher end that most people are searching for, and they may not even know that's what they want, but I can tell you the people that I talk to on the phone all the time are looking for content editing. Content editing is also called developmental, structural, or substantive editing. So any of those terms are really referring to the highest level, the most creative overall perspective of what you've written, the plot, the storyline, the character development, and all those fun things.
So that's also called story editing too, right? I mean, I've heard so many ways to describe it.
Right. Once we get off anything, when people get above line editing and they start just, is it any good? So that's where we are.
The story, is the story good? Is it, does it match the genre that you're targeting and characters doing the right things, entering and exiting scenes, and actually you're not dropping any and early stuff like that, right?
Right.
But what I wanted to say is that, what I always advise authors to do is to have a final proofread after their book is printed, when they have that proof in their hand after the advanced reader copy, or ARC, or ARC as it's called. Mm-hmm. Are you calling that copy editing or final proofreading?
No, that's the proofreading. If they've gone into the publishing and the formatting and all that, you definitely need to do a proofreading at that point, because lots of things happen. One, we're human. Everyone's human. And the best editor out there is always going to be human. But every human still makes mistakes.
Yes.
But also, when you put it into the formatting, things change. And these digital numbers, your binary components, they start hopping all over. You don't know what's going to happen. And that's part of the proofreading, is making sure that it lays out in a way that doesn't disrupt the story, doesn't disrupt the meaning of what you're trying to convey.
Right. Okay, so let's go through those levels, those three major levels, I guess.
Sure. Well, we'll start at the highest, which I think is what most people are looking for, and that's that content edit, structural, substantive, or developmental. And that's the style. It's looking at both literature and even research. This is where you're looking at the overall concept. What is your story? What is your mission here? What are you trying to convey, and how are you going to take us along here? And is it cohesive? Is it making sense? Are you introducing it in a manner which, that builds in a way and makes it believable? It's cohesive in those things. So
you're building your narrative arc there, right?
Exactly. So it's everything that you want to talk to your editor about in terms of making sure that makes sense. And of course, it covers some of the grammar, spelling, punctuation, because we're not going to leave that undone. Mm-hmm. But it's more about your dialogue. It's about your character development. It's about your plot line. It's about, did your names change? These simple things that, quite often that's the first time you come in contact with an editor or somebody who's trying to help you along this path, this creative path.
Do you think that editor should be well-versed in the genre that you're writing in? Like, if you're writing mystery, should your editor?
Yes. I think that, editors have a unique skill, so they can expand out. But of course, the best match is always going to be somebody who understands your audience and your genre the best. So of course we always try to match our editors with the same genre. You wouldn't have a science fiction editor doing academic work.
Yeah, for sure. No.
It just doesn't make sense. So, and in the same, nonfiction editing is a totally different perspective of trying to convey information and knowledge and, call to actions and what you want these people to do versus somebody who's really taking you into this magical world. So they're totally different. And so, yes, you want to match your editor with your genre always.
And I guess that this is a time to say that, with FirstEditing, you have a whole huge stable of editors that you match up with people who come to you. And just right up front here, before we go any further, I know I'm kind of interrupting the flow, but I think it's important to say that approach an editor. Do you pay for maybe a sample edit, or, how does that work? Because you could throw a lot of money down the drain using an editor that you end up not liking.
Our business model is unique, and I can say that we've been around, just online. We've been around since 1998 or whatever like that in the writing industry.
Oh, way back.
I've been around online with this company since 2007 it was. And so during that time, we have always offered a free editing sample. Now, we're not going to do 2 chapters and hand it back to you. We're going to take 10 to 20 pages of your work and then spit back, 4 or 5 pages there so that you can see if it's a match between the editor. Now, there are places that offer, I think that people are charging for samples. That's up to you. But I think that if you can send in a portion of your document for somebody to take a look at, an editor who is from your genre, as we said, and we match that first, then they can give you a pretty good feedback immediately on, okay, these are the weaknesses that I'm seeing in just this small portion you've sent me. These are the repetitive. These are your little hooks that are falling through. But also, this is the level of editing you need. You need to go ahead and go to a content edit. Or if you're an established published author who's on their 5th, 6th novel or whatever, then they're coming in and they're saying, you know what, this looks good to go. I'm going to do a basic line edit. We're going to get you out the door. And if you have any questions, then we'll do the final copy edit and get you printing. So really, that's a very good time to get the recommendation. And also, it's a very good time for you as the writer to evaluate, wow, do I like the way this person is speaking to me? Do I feel like they understand? Because it's matchmaking. It's not always
personality test too. It's like, because you have the editors that I've used, we've ended up becoming friends. I've had one, we didn't end up being friends. It was very painful for me to work with her. I know, but it's just really, it's such a relationship because it's so personal, your story. And
I would say that this is your baby. So we're basically your midwife. And if you don't feel comfortable with that midwife, you need to get somebody else, because now is not the time don't wait when you're just going out the door to publish. You need to have somebody there from the very beginning to hold your hand.
So how far in advance is that? So if I'm saying, okay, I want to, so this is October, and I say I want to publish my book in May, right? Is that enough time to developmental, copy, edit, proof, and everything?
From our perspective, yes. But from your perspective, I can't answer that because we do this day in, day out. Our editors, they're not answering the phones. They're not looking for the next work. They have job security. We provide them editing all the time. So they become experts in their genre and they just deal with that day in and day out. So we're quite effective, and it's kind of like a master pianist. It sounds difficult for those who don't play the piano, but for those who do, wow, it's just doing their job. But when you get the information back, that takes some time to digest and to go through and just see all the changes, to accept each one, to consider any of the recommendations. We meet a lot of highly motivated people in the world, and when that deadline, it is the best thing you can have. When you set a deadline, it is your motivator, and you make that public to other people, you're held accountable, and we can knock it out.
That's true. And I was talking with Mark Coker of Smashwords about pre-orders, and he actually said that when you set your book up for a pre-order, the authors who do that, they get something like 70 or 80% more sales than authors who don't do pre-orders. So that's kind of interesting too. So that's a motivator.
So I think that's plenty of time. But again, you need to be able to hold to your own deadline.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so now I've got my suggestions back from the content editor, you're calling it. So it's up to me to kind of work my story into the narrative arc and make sure that my characters are present and accounted for all the way through the book, or killed off, or whatever you want to do with them. And so I give it back. Do I give it back to the same editor for the copy editing, or do I find a new editor for that?
That is a personal choice. Some people want to go to other ones. In our company, we found that a lot of people do want to stay with the same one because, as you said, it's a relationship and they trust you, and now they're going to the next level. But on occasion, they switch out, and that's just as healthy. I think it's a personal choice. The line editing is the next choice, and that's going to get you into the basic line-by-line process where they're doing the grammar, spelling, punctuation, looking for your crutches, your overuse or misuse in the document, anything that may be holding you back instead of the story and what you're trying to convey. Now we're looking at, are you conveying it well? Are you able to give it great dialogue and great description in a way that keeps us engaged as a reader in that genre and makes us want more? And if you're not, then let's figure out how to do that. Are you repetitive? Are you using the same verbs? Do you have jargon, repetition there? Is your style consistent? And is the compositional spacing all there?
So that's kind of like pacing, right?
Yes, to a degree. I mean, it's basically making sure that it's consistent and it flows well, and it's logical. The first step was creative and artistic, and that's your content edit, and it's conveying what you need. Now we're getting more technical. We're bringing you in. Are you clearly enunciating what you have to convey here? Are you writing it in a manner that it makes sense?
Right. So I was talking with Christine Stanley last week of Fictionary.com, which is a electronic story editor. And I think that might be a good first pass before giving your story to a line editor, because it identifies what they call empty stages, areas where your characters are doing something, but there's no, home or woods or setting around them. And if the pacing is really slow or if it's irregular, like if the word count varies widely between scenes, so things drag. It's kind of a magical piece of software. I think it's almost like artificial intelligence. But what she's told me is, she says editors love it when authors put their story through before giving it to a line editor, because that way you get to work on the juicy stuff and not the kind of boring stuff that can be handled by AI these days, right?
Exactly. There are so many fantastic tools out there that, Fictionary, there's Grammarly, everything, right? Yeah, Writing Aid, name it. Scrivener. There's all these fantastic tools out there, and the more tools you use, just find whatever works for you, and so that you get to a level where you feel like you come in with a more complete project for us. And not only is that better for us as a partnership as we're working together, but it also saves you money in the long run, because
Oh,
I can
yeah.
tell you that editing, it can get expensive depending upon how many rounds you want to go through. And some people have the cash to do that and other people don't. And we want to be there for everyone to get the best chance they can at getting their word out there, getting their story published, be it with a traditional publishing house or if they're self-publishing, whichever way they go.
Interesting that you brought that up, because I was really enlightened. I think it was about a decade ago. I was talking to a friend of mine who had, she's regularly published by the traditional publishing system and an agent. And she was complaining like she had hired an editor, and it was costing her $5,000 or $8,000 or something. I'm like, wait a minute, you're hiring the editor? Isn't your publishing house hiring the editor? And she said, yeah, but with the kind of demise of the traditional publishing system, who only really pay attention to their top 5% of authors, she doesn't get the story editing that she would have in the past. And so she wanted to make sure that the story was really amazing before it went through the mill at the publishing house where she was published, which was, I'm not going to name it, but it's one that you would recognize. So I was super, super surprised. So how many traditionally published or hybrid authors do you help? And this, a lot, huh?
I mean, we get so many people who are, top sellers, best-selling authors, and they come back because, again, it's their reputation on the line. And we are in the golden age of publishing. The competition is immense. That author is a perfect example of somebody taking proactive step to preserve their reputation and to ensure that they have a secure job there when it comes to getting their next book out. Because if you start to become lazy, there's somebody waiting, and you just never know when they're going to get that contract. And there's only so many out there, really.
Yeah.
So it's immense. But yeah, definitely. We deal with the newbies who are the first-time authors, whom we hold their hand from the very beginning, to the authors who come back. And it's always great when I see, I just want to proofread. And I think, really? And then I look into their background, their history in our files of how long they've been with us. And I go, oh yeah, they're good. And they just want to make sure that there's no glaring mistakes.
Let's talk about money. What does it cost to do that high level and mid level line editing and content editing? Right.
So we do around 3,000 to 4,000 edits a year. And so we're around 35, 40,000 authors we've dealt with, or should I say projects. Many of those authors are returning. 1 to 2 cents per word on up to 5-6 cents a word on the higher end. Can add a consultation, things like that. But if you're looking for in and out editing, you're looking between 1 to 3 cents per word on the average. And if you go into that high end executive editing, the content editing, as we said, the structural editing, then you're looking at maybe 4 or 5 cents a word.
Got it. Yeah. Right.
Which is very competitive. Compare it out there, and again.
Oh yeah, I've seen much more than that too. And
oh yeah. I had this very interesting conversation with an author last week. He was looking for promises, not editing, but promises. He wanted to know, if you edit my book, are you going to give it, which agent can you hand this off to? Who can you recommend? Who are you going to forward this to? Well, these are common questions because people, once you get to a certain level of pay, when you're paying $2,000, $3,000, and you're new in the game, like, well, are you going to hand this off? And it's not ideal. Know your audience before you start. What books are you similar to? And where's their audience? Where are their people?
Right. Do your market research and your competitive analysis. Use that Google, that Amazon advanced search feature, and really know your audience and your ideal reader. Yeah, I can do that there. You're not an agency. That's funny.
No, but they don't get it because it's such a huge new world. And so many people stay behind the screen and then they pop out and they're that new person out there. There are editors who are making these promises saying, well, we publish and we do all these things. And I don't like that. I think you need to be honest with people and say, what we do is we prepare you to approach an agent. At least FirstEditing does. We prepare you to approach an agent. We prepare you to self-publish. We prepare you on that level. We prepare you to go back to your agent. but we're not going to do the publishing or the marketing on your behalf. And that's a whole, as you know, a book in itself.
It is. It's a big book.
Big book.
Wow. So what are the most common mistakes you see, or the common like lazy habits, or anything that you can think of that you can warn our writers against doing, or advise them to do?
People each have a crutch of some sort. And when you start to see words that repeat themselves, those transitional phrases or verbs that you say again and again, or transitioning from first person to second person, those are quite often where people, they can't seem to flow. The cohesion gets lost. Or they keep switching back, first it was in first person, now it's in second person. Who are they talking about? And that can happen so easily because but you
the
have
point
to
of view problem.
It's hard to see because you when you're writing your book, you're getting deeper and deeper into the forest of your mind, and now you can't see the trees anymore. And so the editor is basically the lumberjack who comes in and says, "Wow, you know what? Let me show you some new pines over here and pull you around and show you what you need to kind of be aware."
That's a funny analogy. The lumberjack. Let's just tear down this forest and start over again.
No.
I'm sorry. No, but it's, you know what I've gotten to know after, my years of writing and being in writing groups and working with editors, that I go and search for certain words in my manuscripts all the time, like get. I try to replace all the gets with gots and gets with something. And that's also where I think ProWriting Aid is probably my favorite tool for finding those repetitive and passive verbs.
And the great thing about a tool like that is you learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about your own writing style. And that's what editing should be. You should be walking away with an education about yourself, some insight.
Well, yeah, if you're going to invest in an editor, you should actually take their advice. And I actually love talking with editors about my books and writing groups and finding out what the heck, what was I wanting to convey here. And knowing about my habits is really helpful. I just enjoy it. And I think most writers like the process. Do you feel that way? Or do you feel like there's some deep pain around the editing process?
No. It's kind of like a personal trainer, First, you kind of dread them. You see them again. Oh, they're going to tear me down. But at the same point, you get stronger and stronger every step of the way. And then you start to look at, okay, I'm not going to skip over this. I'm actually going to do it. And you start being more honest with yourself and your day-to-day structure of how you function as a writer. And I think that's fantastic. And editors, they love it because it's kind of I would say every editor has a teacher hidden inside of them. They love to see the growth and the development and the success of their people out there in the world. And it's always great. We get loads. Every year we get a couple books sent to us, and people are like, please, can you give this to so-and-so? And we're included in their recognition. And that's just fantastic. You don't have to, but it is something that you kind of share this long journey together. And it's a fantastic feeling.
Well, I'm looking at your page where you have the books that you've edited, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And on. Load more books. There's a lot of genres here. My students in the Self-Pub Bootcamp courses are really appreciating your videos on what the different kinds of editing are. And people can also find those, I think, on YouTube, right?
Yeah, there's some there. Yes, and we're coming out with more and more.
So where should we go next? Let's see.
We've covered line editing and content editing. I don't know if you want to... Copy editing is really... Oh,
yeah, definitely copy editing. Because I think I call copy editing, I think I use that as an umbrella term for line editing.
Copy editing is the final step in the editing process. And you need a copy...
Proofreading is the final step.
No. Proofreading is after you've already put it into formatting.
Right, it's printed and it's... Well, okay, so I guess that's not editing. That's just proofreading. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just trying to find those missing commas, or maybe a word you might have deleted when you putting it into that final formatting tool.
Exactly. And that's a very important process. And quite often people say, well, I've had it edited. I don't need to proof it. But as I like to say again and again, you never know what happens inside that magical box.
Oh, it's just crazy what happens. And it always seems to happen on the first page. I know my self-publishing bootcamp guide for authors, in the table of contents, the very first entry, the words were mushed together. Like there's no spaces between in the title. And I was like, how did that happen? And I didn't catch it. That's those things. And I've known people who've found that their author name has been spelled wrong in the title page, way after the fact, because you don't proofread that stuff. It's just silly.
Yeah, it is silly, but unbelievably important. The most important.
It's so embarrassing. Okay, right. So we've gotten off onto the proofreading tangent. So that final copy editing, what is that all about? So you've been through your developmental or your story editing, and
now you've gone down to your line editing,
and now it's your copy editing.
Right, and these are your remaining problems with that grammar, spelling, punctuation. This is when they're basically the editor is looking at every single sentence in terms of grammar, spelling, punctuation. Is this a dangling participle? What do we have going on here? Did you use a transitional phrase? Did you put the comma in there correctly? Exactly. All those wonderful things that people go, what? Yeah. And no longer looking at it from paragraph and the chapter perspective. Now it's just basically taking each sentence and reading it backwards. Is this absolutely correct?
Wait, did you actually say that? You take each sentence and read it backwards?
That's what I recommend when you're self-editing. When you really just can't see the story itself anymore, turn to the back page and just start reading a little bit. Read. And some people, you have to do the paragraph, but just reading a paragraph by itself will show you, okay, does this make any sense at all? And sometimes it's the little things, like if you forget that comma, wow, it all changed. You have no idea what you just said.
So you take your book. So say I finish a chapter, and I just take that chapter and I read the last paragraph, and I just keep going, reading it paragraph by paragraph, all the way to the beginning of the chapter. I've never heard that, JoEllen. Fantastic.
It's just a little trick, and it allows you to kind of catch a few things on the way.
Interesting.
So anyhow, the basic copy edit is what you're going to do. It's efficient. It's straightforward. It is normally the last thing you do before formatting. And the line editing is the most common level, that when you go to a professor or an agent or, your friends and they say, you need to have this edited, normally they mean at least a line edit or higher.
Well, yeah, I guess the last thing I want to ask you, unless we've forgotten anything, is do you have any one huge to-do or a piece of advice for authors in the editing realm that you think everybody should do? Give us your wisdom from all these years of having edited books and running a team. I mean, you've got so many editors. Is there a pet peeve that authors can avoid, or what would help an author succeed in the editing realm, in your opinion, the most?
I think it's being open to whatever feedback is available out there, and you don't have to accept it all. That doesn't mean they're right and that you're wrong, but open to a dialogue between you and another person that lets you question your own style, your own perspective, your own story. Really, once you are discussing it, you will dig deeper. It's kind of like religion or politics or whatever. As long as there's an open dialogue, it can only blossom and grow. You get a better understanding of yourself, and you get a better understanding of the world out there. But if you keep yourself in a bubble and are unopen to that possible, maybe they don't like what I'm doing here. Well, that's okay. Maybe you've got something different to convey out there, and that's fine. But I think being open to that dialogue, and when I say dialogue, that's between a professional editor and yourself. That can be between your beta readers and yourself. That can be simply opening up an online app, an editing tool, and applying it, and all these other tools we talked about, because they all help you to see yourself in a different light and be open to that, because this is a process that's all about development. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about being open to creating something wonderful that wasn't there in the beginning.
Thanks. That's great advice. Yeah, dialogue. Nice.
Dialogue. The world needs more dialogue.
Editing. I love your tagline, FirstEditing, transforming writers into authors.
That's what we do.
That's quality. What I think is, this writing business is it's great It's great company. I think most professionals really want to do a great job because it's what they love to do. And
Mhm.
so a lot of authors are nervous about hiring help because they're, this just scared to get a sloppy job. This isn't Fiverr, folks. This is actually professional organization. Whether you're ordering a design or an edit or whatever you're doing, you get the people who like to do it and have been doing it for a long time. I also want to point out your blog and your podcast.
All of the authors that we interview are published authors who happen to have used our editing services. But what we talk about is, what did you learn in this process, and where did you spend money you wish you hadn't, and what were the most valuable services you found along the way, and who helped you publish. And it's been very eye-opening for me because I really enjoy, as you know, once you start doing a podcast, it becomes really fascinating, the people you meet.
It's always fascinating to me to hear other authors' stories and how their process went, the writing process and the publishing process as well. So great, good. I look forward to listening to some of these. I just noticed that you had this podcast. How long has it been up?
Since March or April, I believe it is. So yeah.
Okay, so not that long. Okay, so we
started
about the same time. I didn't even know it. Okay, well, great. All right. Well, thank you, JoEllen Taylor, for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
So that's it for now. I hope you'll listen in to the next episode of the Author Friendly Podcast, where you'll hear more voices from the people behind the tools, services, and products you depend on for your self-publishing journey. Find the show notes at authorfriendly.com, along with links to iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, SoundCloud, and all the other places you can listen to the podcast. And can I ask you a favor? Ratings help float the podcast to the top so that other authors like you can find it. So if you'd navigate to your podcast subscription service and give it some stars, I'd really appreciate it. Also on authorfriendly.com, you'll find free resources like my Consumer's Guide for Self-Publishers, which was the inspiration for this podcast. Yes, this is my obsessively updated ebook with reviews of the products, tools, and services that you'll hear about in this podcast. They'll help you not only write your book, but design it, format it, print, distribute, and market your books, and also do business as an author. If you need more help in your self-publishing journey, I've created a complete series of online courses that will help you with all of those tasks. Just go to selfpubbootcampcourses.com or pop me a note via email at hello@selfpubbootcamp.com, or just go to the site, selfpubbootcamp.com, if you have any questions at all. Okay, signing off again. I hope you'll subscribe and tune in next week for the Author Friendly Podcast, your consumer's guide in audio format to help guide your self-publishing journey. Thanks.